go on down to Florida and talk about this character. His name was Phil Kovolick, a.k.a. The Stick. He was born in 1906. He died in 1971. He lived in Manhattan as a child, 296 Delancey Street. I know Delancey Street. That's in the Village, right? Yeah. Kovolick did time at Elmira State Prison in 1927. 10 days after he was released, he was arrested again in a large garment robbery, and he was arrested again after that a few weeks later as a suspected killer of a dentist, Dr. Jacob Goss, in 1928. He was, for the most part, off and on a drug dealer. He worked with the Bugs and Meyer's mob during the prohibition. In the 1930s, he slipped over to work for the Lepke gang. In 1939 alone, he and other members of Lepke's organization were questioned in the following garment district murders: Irving Feldman, Danny Feld, Abraham Whitey Friedman, Hyman Yuran, a defendant who disappeared, Joey Miller, a defendant shot to death, Leon Scharff and his wife Rhea, witnesses who disappeared. He was present at the Franconia meeting of the Jewish crime lords. I think that was I've forgotten the day. Anyway, he went on to become Frank Costello's driver for a little while because Lansky and Costello were relatively good friends. He then worked for Jake and Meyer Lansky down in Florida in the Hillendale operations they had down there, the so-called carpet joint casinos. He took up residence. He liked Florida. He took up residence there while Kiefhofer was appearing around 1952. He said, "I'm in New York. I can get arrested for drinking a coffee. In Florida, I'm left alone." Up until at least 1966, Kovolick was, according to Hank Messick, a crime writer and researcher I respect a lot, Kovolick was Lansky's partner to the New York families. In 1970, Lansky was fleeing tax evasion charges. He moved to Israel as a returning Jew. He would remain there for 2 years, but while he was gone, he essentially stripped Kovolick of his power base. I mean, without Lansky, he was just another old guy. April 29, 1972, they found him dead, Kovolick dead in Hallandale. His body was sealed in a drum and left at the bottom of a rock quarry. He'd been missing for a while. April 8, 1971, they found him basically a year later. He told his wife on the day he left, April 8th, that he was going to go to the supermarket, and he never came back. At the time he was killed, federal agents were searching for Kovolick for his interest in this multi-state gambling operation, mostly a southern states thing. And there was an extradition paper out for him by the DA, the New York DA, who wanted him for questioning about a whole lot of other things. Eventually, a hood named John Alvin Baxter was arrested for the murder. He was found guilty, sentenced to death. The sentence was commuted by a Supreme Court ruling, so he got life in prison instead. Baxter owned the iron works close to where they found Kovolick's body in the tin drum. A teenager witnessed it. He called the police, but his testimony was largely discounted because the kid was just an out-and-out criminal. He was a bank robber, and God knows what else. But Baxter had an employee who helped him load the corpse into the drum, and he later turned state's evidence. Why Kovolick was murdered, who paid Baxter, I don't know. It isn't really clear. I mean, obviously they didn't want him talking, but Baxter never talked. He never spoke. So the whole thing remains sort of a mystery.